Hello and welcome to the Passion Project Genius Hour and Inquiry-Based Learning webinar series. Today we are delighted to have Jennifer Montgomery. She is a 7th grade ELA teacher at Eminence Independent Schools, and she has been having her students do passion projects for more than 4 years. So we're really excited to have her share her expertise and knowledge and several different examples of what she does and how she does it. This is, again, the school where Buddy Berry is a superintendent. So we're delighted to have her. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jennifer.
Thank you. So I thought the best way to start would maybe just be showing some different examples of passion projects, or at least end results of passion projects from different people in my school. So I'm gonna try to share my screen here so I can show some of these. The first one was, these are just different examples from different grade levels. So we had one passion project that wanted to do a courtyard makeover. And so they worked for their entire project on doing different things in one of our courtyards. One of them was the flower box that you see there, and they built the box and then planted the flowers. Another example, this was an elementary example. We had a buddy bench, and so they put this bench on the playground so that anyone who didn't have a buddy to play with that day could sit on the buddy bench, and then other kids would go over and ask them if they wanted to play basketball or whatever they were doing that day. So that was a really neat one. This is my son. He was in 4th grade in this picture. So he loved this project. It was called Lab Rats, and it was taught by a 4th grade teacher. And they did all sorts of experiments. One of his favorite experiments was popcorn. They tested 6 different types of popcorn, and they had all different criteria, like which one pops the most and which one has the best value for the cost and things like that. So now every time I go to the store to buy popcorn, I have to buy a particular brand because he reminds me from his Lab Rats project of which one is the best choice, Mom. And then another thing that happened from that project was they did some testing with worms. And he actually asked to bring home all the leftover worms. So we got to have a continuation of the project at our house, which wasn't my favorite part, but it was pretty cool that he wanted to continue with the project. So that's another example. This is one of my daughter's projects that she did as an 8th grader and again as a freshman. So some of our teachers will choose to repeat the same project for multiple years and give different kids the opportunity to join the project or even join it again. She actually did this project twice. And so the songwriting project was the students that were in it actually wrote their own song. For some of them, that was just lyrics. Some of them, that was lyrics and the musical score. They got to go to a recording studio. Some of them got to actually make a recording of the song that they wrote. And then they all got the opportunity to perform their song the night of presentation. So that one she loved because she loves music. She loves musical theater. And so the opportunity to get someone to help her write her own song was like a dream come true for her. And this last picture example, this one I just put on here because I thought this was a project that no one would sign up for. Personally, when I looked at the choices and I saw that someone was giving the option of maypole dancing, I was thinking, no kid is going to sign up to learn how to maypole dance. They probably don't even know what it is. Actually, that project filled up really quickly, and I got to see some of their dances, and they did a great job, and they were really interesting to watch. So just a variety of different types of projects. And then the format of our projects at Eminence, and I imagine this could look different at every school you might visit. So our format is we have a 1-hour project launch. And in that project launch, previous to the project launch, students have been able to view a description of all the different projects that are offered and sign up for their top 3 or 4 choices. And so then on project launch day, they've been put in one of their top 3 choices, and they get a chance to hear from the project leader, what is an overview of this project? What's it going to look like? And then I also try to approach my 1-hour project launch like a PBO. And so I try to make sure that it's something out of the ordinary, or maybe we're leaving the classroom or we're having a guest speaker that day, something to get the kids already involved in the work, even though we really haven't started yet, to just start asking questions. And also in the 1 hour project launch, students can decide, this isn't really what I thought I was signing up for, and they can request to be changed to a different project. That's been an important part because the first year we didn't really have that in place. And I ended up having a student in my project that I had to pretty much pull through the project because he really wasn't that interested in it. And he ended up in that project and we didn't really have a system for how can I say this is not really for me. So that's been important for us to add into it. We have about 2 hours, 45 minutes to 3 hours a day for 4 days in a row after the 1 hour project launch. Usually we have 1 to 2 weeks in between the first project launch and when we actually start exploring. That's been really important because some teachers will ask student input during the 1 hour project launch, and then they have that week or two window before the projects actually begin to make sure they can start to implement some of the things that the kids were really interested in or really wanted to explore. After the 4 days of exploration, the last day, that night, we have the presentation of learning, and we invite community members, parents, board members. The first time we did this, we were kind of unprepared because we really didn't know that we would have such an overwhelming response from our community, which was great. We tried to host them all in one central location, which was our gym, and we had a flood of people. I mean, it was fine. We made it work. But it was amazing how many people came out to see the projects. So now we've spread them out pretty much all over the building, and parents kind of get a map, and they get a program when they come in, and so they can find different projects, especially if they're looking for a certain one, or they can just walk around and explore and see what the kids have been learning. And I've also been impressed that parents and community members haven't just come and I'm going to stay here for 5 minutes and listen to my student present about their project. I've been impressed that they've stayed, walked around, looked at lots of different projects, and gotten excited about the work that students have been doing. So that, to me, that's one of the most rewarding parts, is to see the students presenting, and then to see people interested and asking them questions, and then seeing that the students are able to answer the questions. And that's just been a really rewarding part to see. One of the projects that I did a couple years ago was, I just called it Pay It Forward and based it off of the Pay It Forward novel. I'm an ELA teacher, so sometimes, or a lot of times, I will try to include literacy in the project itself. So Pay It Forward, the students were not required to read this book, but were encouraged to read the book. They got it a couple weeks before the project started and were encouraged to read it so that the project would probably make more sense. On our launch day, we actually spent launch day discussing what are the things that we want to make a difference in. What are some areas in our community that we feel like we could make an impact and that we want to do something to pay it forward. So for that first day, I had an activity planned for them also so they could go ahead and start doing something. And so we learned that 20% of kids in our community had food insecurity, and they prepared animal cracker snack bags for snack time in elementary schools. And they also wrote encouraging messages on those. That was just a little starter activity to get the kids thinking about what kinds of things they could do. And then they actually, in that 1 hour launch, kind of planned out, these are the 4 things that we would really like to accomplish, since we had 4 days that we were going to be working. So one of the 4 things that they really were interested in doing was they wanted to do some positive affirmations. They talked about how there's been a lot of school violence, school shootings, and they felt like for them, one way that they wanted to make an impact was to spread more positive messages at our own school. So they did some research, and they actually spent quite a bit of time writing a letter to our Board of Education and asking them for permission to put some of these messages out there. And they worked really hard on writing the letter and those types of things, not actually creating it yet, but asking for permission. And they did a great job of explaining what they wanted to do and why they wanted to do it. Another thing they did was I wanted them to have an experience outside of our school that showed that people really do believe in the pay it forward model and giving back to people that haven't done anything for them. So we visited a restaurant in Louisville about an hour from us called The Table. And it was really awesome opportunity. My students got to go and work at the table. So some of them worked in the kitchen, some of them worked out in the serving area, some of them worked in the office area. And after they worked, that was the way that they earned their meal. And so that's what the table offers to anyone. You can come into the restaurant, you can pay for your meal, you can come in and pay for a portion of your meal, you can come in and you can work, and that work is your pay for your meal. So most of them had never experienced anything like that. So that was a great experience for them to kind of work for and earn their meal, but also to know that there are models like this that are out there that other people are putting into practice. They really wanted to visit our a local nursing home. And so another day of our project, they reached out, they bought balloons, they went in and told stories to some of the residents at the nursing home. And they really just expressed, this was 100% their idea, because I don't necessarily do well at places like nursing homes, but they were really passionate. They wanted to do it. They said, you know, people feel like no one cares about them. We want to go and not have an agenda and literally just go and spend time with them and let them know that we care. So that was one of the things that we did. And then another day they wanted to, even though this is not necessarily pay it forward, because some of these people are people that have done things for them, but they still wanted to show appreciation. So they decided to make some baked goods and cookies and personalized cards and hand those out to people that work at the Board of Education, janitors, different staff members. And that was another day. Also on that day, they prepared spring break bags. So for students who have food insecurity, and we have 2-week breaks. So if you're facing food insecurity and you have a 2-week break from school, that's a long period of time where you normally would have a breakfast and lunch meal provided at school, and now you don't have that. So they really wanted to do something about that, and they did research into that and worked with our Family Resource and Youth Service Center to accomplish that part of the project too. And so what I just walked you through and showed you was actually their presentation that they made to show the different work that they did on that night. So we spend about the last 15 to 30 minutes of the project work each day is reflecting on, what did you do today? What did you learn today? How will you be able to present this to the presentation of learning night so that people know what kind of work that you've done. So that was a project where we actually did something completely different every day. It doesn't always look like that. I did another project that was every day we were working on water scarcity. So one day for our project launch, we took gallons of water, we went outside and we walked a mile so that they could get the feel for the idea that some people have to walk and get the water that they drink every day, walk it back, and it gets heavier the farther you have to walk. So starting to build empathy. In that project, I also invited in several guest speakers. One of the activities that we did in that project was the students made their own water filters, and they learned how the filtration process works. So I worked in some science into it as well. And then they also did research on different countries of the world and how water scarcity is affecting people in different places. So really projects, there's not one way that they have to look or have to sound. And so I thought I would kind of transition in how do you get started on a project. So I start with maybe some rough ideas. Sometimes it's just a topic. Like I would really like to, or kids have told me they would really like to explore blank, whatever that topic is. And so one thing that's been really helpful for us is to just bring a complete rough idea and have a gallery walk. So sometimes in the gallery walk, some teachers have a ton of work done. They've already thought through lots of the process and what it's going to look like. And sometimes all they have is a theme or a general idea. So for the project that was the Pay It Forward project, I really wasn't excited about I'd worked on ideas for about a month, and I really hadn't decided on what I was going to do. I had two rough ideas, but I wasn't really excited about either one. I had talked to some kids, got some feedback, but again, there wasn't just like one thing that was sticking out to me. But what happened in the gallery walk is my assistant principal stopped by. I kind of pitched to her the two ideas that I was tossing around, said, I don't know. And then she mentioned two or three different things. Well, if you went with the pay it forward idea, had you thought about this? Had you thought about taking them somewhere where they can see a model that's kind of like this? Had you thought about, she gave me two or three things to think about, and those two or three things helped me brainstorm all sorts of different ideas. So the gallery walk has been really a great process for us to walk through at different points in the project, but especially at the beginning, helping teachers just get feedback from each other, from colleagues. So the way we worked that gallery walk is we split us, the teachers, in half. So half of us were presenters while the other half walked around and viewed different projects, and then we swapped places. So another cool thing about that gallery walk was we got to see a lot of different ideas from a lot of people, and so sometimes that sparks a lot of ideas that we could use as well. So that's been very effective. And then the other thing that I do when I'm planning is I try to plan opportunities. So not just activities that we're going to do, but opportunities where kids are going to get to explore. And sometimes that exploring is researching. Sometimes that exploring is going outside the building and exploring things through a field trip or through a guest speaker or through discussions that we're going to have in class. But I like to think of it as learning opportunities. What opportunities am I planning for them to explore, rather than like a lesson plan where I'm just planning this is all the things that we're going to do in this 3-hour time period. Funding, when we first started, the first year that we did passion projects 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't have a plan for funding. It was try to be creative, do what you can do, come up with what you can come up with. So I used Donors Choose that year. That year, my first project was about fractured fairy tales. And so I took my students to a local community theater, or not community theater, but a local theater. And so I needed money for their transportation and for their tickets, and I got those funded through Donors Choose. Since then, however, our school and our school community has seen how amazing these projects are and how they kind of build community and school relationships. So we have an incredible PTSA and Education Foundation, which are two separate things, and they have both created grant opportunities so that teachers can apply for grants. If you have a particular idea and you want to request funding for it, those are two different grant options that we have. And so for the Long Walk to Water, when I did the water scarcity project, I wanted the kids to be able to read a very short book called The Long Walk to Water, and it's about 100 pages, but it really helps you build empathy for people living and facing water scarcity. And so they granted me that and bought me about 20 copies of the book so that my students could all have their own copy. Another cool thing that happened out of that project was the project went so well and the kids learned and explored so much that I decided to create an entire PBL out of that one project for my own ELA classroom, because I teach 7th grade ELA. And I actually use that project every year at the beginning of the year. And when I have students move on, because our school's small, so I still get to see them when they go on to like 8th and 9th and 10th grade. So they'll come back and say, did you do that water project yet? So they remember the project and they remember the things that they learned in it, which is exciting. And I love that it started with the Passion Project, which was a 4-day thing, and it grew into a much bigger project in my actual classroom. We also do Kona Ice Days, and so our principal will grant money if she has some of the Kona Ice money, which is just a fundraiser. So some of that money set aside for Passion Projects, so we can also request funding that way. And then a really exciting thing is our Board of Education has decided that these are important enough that any field trip that is now associated with the Passion Project, they fund the transportation. So they'll pay for the bus to take the kids anywhere we want to take them. And usually every project has at least a small field trip associated with it. Sometimes it's just in our local community. Sometimes it's traveling to Louisville, which is about an hour from us. But usually every project has some sort of field trip, and it's really amazing that our Board of Education values it enough that they've said, we're going to stand behind you and support you in this. So that's been really exciting and really helpful way to get some of these things off the ground and get them moving. The project I'm working on for this year, I don't have all ironed out yet, but I'm going to partner with our local library. We have a new building that has just been built and nobody's been inside of it yet. It's supposed to be opening in the next month or two. So we're going to try to host our whole project in the local library as long as it's open by then, and the idea of this project is to learn a little bit more about the things that our library has to offer and how kids can get involved, and also how they can be a part of a lot of different opportunities that the library has. So our public library offers painting classes. They offer a number of things. So we're going to kind of take some of those things that the library offers and condense them so that kids can experience like a plethora of different things that the library has to offer. And then as a part of it, since it's a brand new building, we're also going to help design some things for the teen section of the library. We're going to let the kids help us brainstorm what types of things they want to create, but we're going to use some of our tools that we have here at school to create, whether they want to make signs or cardboard cutouts or whatever it might be, to make that have more of like a teen-friendly environment. So I think it'll be really great for them to be able to walk into the new building and point out to people, hey, I helped make that. So those were some of the things that I just wanted to make sure that I shared, and I wanted to see if there were other things that you guys would like me to talk about.
One thing I thought was interesting, Jennifer, and you mentioned it probably in your particular projects, about the project launch. Would you say that the way in which you launch the passion projects, that you include some components that maybe are unique to other teachers? And if so, what are you finding as a result of including that those project launches?
So I mean, I'm not involved in other people's launches, so I don't exactly know what other people's launches look like, but I have found that my students are the students that I'm going to have in that project. They come to the first day of the project ready. Like, they're ready to explore, they're ready to start learning. They already have questions or ideas that they want to explore, that they want to learn, because of how I launched the project with the project launch, with having a guest speaker, or with like with the water scarcity, we went outside and walked the mile with the water. They've already begun to develop empathy or to develop questions or ideas for exploration. So when they come on day one, they don't come in like, okay, what are we going to do? Like, they already have things that they know that they want to explore. So that's the benefit that I found with launching the project in that way.
I definitely can see that, because you know, I think that's just a unique component, and I think it's it not only provides the opportunity for kids to, you know, get a picture of, you know, what is this going to be, what are we going to do, you know, but you know, the excitement around it, but it also just helps propel the project versus something that could just be really flat.
Yeah. And I also use, which I do this with my PBL projects, but a time for knows and needs a knows. So in the 1 hour project launch, like, what are some things that you already know surrounding this topic? What are some things that you want to explore or that you need to know in order to make this project successful? So then I can have time to build in some of those wonders and some of those need to knows. I can build in opportunities to address those different aspects.
Awesome. You had mentioned when we had talked over the phone about I think you said before Christmas break, maybe, that there's a proposal that teachers need to complete, and that admin would, review. Do you have something like that that you could show? If you don't have that readily available, that's fine. Or could you speak to it a little bit?
Yeah, I will speak to it. I thought I had it in my slides and I'm not seeing it. But essentially, it is a very simple form that we use that just basically we give. Can you see that on your screen? Okay, so it's not very extremely detailed, but we give an overview of what are our objectives, what are our goals in the project, how many, because we're allowed to say too, like for my project where we went to the table, they were only going to accept so many students for me to take. I think it was 15. And so I was able to put here on my proposal, I can't have more than 15 students in this project because it won't work if I have more than that. So we can put details like that. We also have to give not a detailed plan, but an overall view of, so day one, what is our project launch going to look like? Are we going to have a guest speaker? What are we going to do on day 2, 3, 4, 5? What is the plan for those activities? And then when we came back from Christmas break and we did receive feedback from our admin team on things that they really liked about our plan. And then if they had questions, they also just we turned these in on Google Classroom, and they basically just responded back on Google Classroom, love these ideas about, whatever, but we're wondering if you've thought about this. So they were able to provide us all feedback in a succinct way by just responding to our project proposals on Google Classroom.
Perfect, thank you.
We also have, if just from administrative kind of standpoint, the person who is in charge of our projects, this might be a little hard to read, but she basically puts together a spreadsheet and shares it with all of the teachers so that we can see all of the different teachers' names, all the different projects that are happening, what grade levels they're happening at, and kind of what needs each project has. She then works very hard to try to make sure that we have the transportation and the technology needed for each of those projects to happen, because everything can't be happening all at the same time with a limited number of resources. So she asks us to be as detailed as possible about tools that we might be using. For example, we have multiple 3D printers and laser cutters. Even though we have multiple, that's not enough for 100 kids to be using at one time. So she asks us to provide those details about, which days will you be using these, for how long do you need to use them, or which day will you be taking a field trip. And sometimes with field trips, she's able to have a couple of groups kind of ride the same bus because they're going to close by places. These are just logistical things, but just maybe interesting for anybody who's going to be fielding the logistical side of it.
Perfect. Leslie, did you have any questions? I have one, but I wanted to
No, I'm over here like eating up the organizational stuff. Like I'm trying to come up with a question and I'm like, oh, I love this. Like I love the project stuff, this side of stuff. I feel like that's something that our teachers haven't seen yet. The idea that students like on that launch can opt out, like that's huge to me. So there's just been like some major takeaways I'm going to repeat because I think they're worthy of pulling out. The other one, I had one more and I was like, oh, like that's really something I hope our teachers grab onto. And now, of course, I lost it. I should have written it in the chat. But no, I'm so appreciating just these like behind the scenes pieces.
Yeah.
One thing I will add that I was thinking of, because I remember I talked to Julie about this and she had told me to make sure I talk about it and I forgot. Our projects, they span multiple grade levels.
No.
So my son, for example, he did a project when he was in second or third grade, and that project was about archaeology. And he had students in that project. He was the youngest, but then there were students who were middle schoolers, students who were high schoolers, and they were all in the same project working together. And it was pretty neat because he come to my room after school and I'm in the high school hallway and he was talking to some high school kids after school. And I was like, how do you know those kids? He said, oh, in my passion project, Mom. Like it was no big deal. And I said, well, what were y'all talking about? Talking about stuff from our projects. And so it was pretty neat for me to see that not only did he, learn a lot in that project, not only was it exciting, he developed relationships with kids that were in multiple different grade levels, and they continued that relationship even after the project was over, which I think is a pretty special thing about having a school our size where we have K to 12 in one building. So that's really easy for us to do. And then one other thing that I forgot to mention, our elementary, our K1, I think it's K1 and 2, they approach the projects a little different, where the kindergarten teachers and students will all plan one project that only they work on, and it's only kindergartners, and all the kindergartners working on the same project. And then I think first grade and second grade does the same thing. One year, I think it was second grade, did a really great project of having some, they have a box out in the front and back of our school that is full of books. And so anytime kids want a book to read, it's always has tons of books in it. They can come and borrow a book and leave a book, or they can just come take a book and keep it. I honestly, I was wondering after like a month that there would still be any books in there, but people will come and they'll put books in there that they're not reading anymore. They'll come get books out. And so that was kind of a neat project that was about 4 years ago. The boxes are still out there. All the kids who made that project, they put their handprints all over the box in paint. So those kids' handprints, those kids are probably in 6th or 7th grade now, and their handprints are still on the boxes and people are still using them. So I also love to see projects like that aren't just a one-time, one and done thing, but that are still things that are kept around and still used.
I'm glad you mentioned multiple grades, because I made a note. Because I thought that was unique, to what you guys do. And I agree with Leslie. As I was listening to Jennifer kind of speak more about what they do and how they do it, I just think that some of that management, organizational pieces that sometimes you don't see behind the scenes, is really important. And then just how you guys have evolved, when you first started and where you're at now. So on that note, are you comfortable sharing this presentation or part of it for people if they wanted to kind of see some of those behind the scenes kinds of documents?
Sure. Okay,
that would be awesome. I think. Oh, my last question was, I'm just curious as you have developed your projects over time and whatnot, did you have any particular people, books, for project, passion project inspiration or ideas? Did you have certain people or resources that you found to be helpful that you kind of followed or used?
Well, this is not a helpful answer because the answer is no. But what was helpful for me was I just am the type of person who'll keep something in the back of my mind, and I will watch something on the news, or I'll be watching a TV program or whatever, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, that would be such a great passion project, and just jot the idea down. So I'm always have it in the back of my mind. I'm always kind of like, sometimes it's just a conversation that I'll have with somebody. Or I'll ask, so the water scarcity project I did, I have a science teacher friend of mine. He's retired now, but is an amazing part of our community, still part of our school community too. And I just got him one day, kind of just said, hey, I'm going to pitch this idea to you since it's science related and see what you think. He had so many wonderful resources and different ideas for me. And you need to watch this video. You need to look up this person. And so for me, it's just been having conversations with people. Believe it or not, my husband, he's not even a teacher, but he knows we do passion projects. And sometimes he'll just say, you know what somebody needs to do for a passion project? And he'll throw out an idea. So sometimes we just pass ideas along to each other too. Like I might think that's a great idea for a project, but it might not be great for me, but it might be really great for my colleague. And so we pass. So I guess that's maybe not a great answer, but I guess it's been more organic as far as just developing ideas as they kind of come rather than trying to sit down and force an idea. The one time that I tried to sit down and really force the ideas to come was the year that I really didn't have a concrete idea. And I hated that feeling of not really being excited about what was I going to do for my next project. So that's what kind of started making me feel like I needed to kind of keep it in the back of my mind and just let ideas come to me and kind of just jot down notes, even if it's just a little note in my phone so I don't forget about it.
Yeah. Well, those sources of inspiration, I mean, I think they're critical. And like you said, I think that's what gets, you as well as kids excited versus I have to design a passion project. What am I going to do? And the timeline is coming, so I could definitely see that. That's awesome.
That was the other thing. It was the investment of the community in it. And just hearing you talk about like your retired teacher friend or even your husband, right? Like the whole community has an investment in that, and that's such a cool component, but also I would imagine part of what makes it so successful.
Yeah, so last year the project that I was involved in was actually brought to us. We had the local cemetery board had a teacher who had reached out to them and had some students work in the local cemetery. They loved it so much, they've come back to us 2 or 3 other times and asked us to do other projects. So one time it was building a bridge to bridge 2 different parts of the cemetery together. The project that I helped them work on last year was with a colleague of mine, but we did just a beautification or kind of makeover for the cemetery where we planted trees. We took stones that were kind of fallen over or decrepit and we put cement under them and just spent 4 days really just doing hard work at making the cemetery something that people could be proud of and, feel like a place that they could come. And so sometimes I think that's been really great that when our community has brought ideas to us.
Really cool. Awesome. Thank you so much. Opportunity. That is my favorite word from your presentation, I think. That theme, like how can we give kids or invest in or just that idea. I like that language that you've been using.
I can't hear Julie anymore.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. That was awesome.
Yeah, Jennifer, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule and sharing lots of examples and some of the other components to what you do and how you guys organize and manage these passion projects to really be set up for success so that kids are engaged and whatnot. So we again thank you, and it was nice meeting you, and you have a good rest of the day, and thank you.
Thank you guys for the opportunity.